College basketball transfer portal is in full swing, and we've got some good news and some bad news for Texas A&M.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Matt Galatzan of Texas A&M Aggies on SI. Today, we will talk college basketball transfer portal, some targets for Texas A&M, some bad news for Texas A&M, but we'll start off with some good news. Joining me today is Zack Dimmitt. And Zach, we got some fantastic news for the Aggies this morning, kind of mid-afternoon, around that time for the 2026 roster. As we know, there's going to be a ton of turnover from last year's team. Aggie gone, Jakari Lane, Rylan Griffin, Ali Deba all gone. Also, Marcus Hill is going to need a waiver if he is going to participate next year. So we were kind of waiting to see who is going to be back outside of McKenzie Mgbako, who we knew was going to return. And we finally found out a solid name that is going to be very important to the plans of the 2026-2027 team, and that's Zack Clemens. Zack Clemens, the big man transfer who started 4 games for the Aggies last season, at times was one of their best offensive players. He would explode on certain nights for points on points on points. He played 16.9 minutes per game, averaged 6.9 points, 8.7 points in SEC play, shot 40% from 3 on just about 3 attempts per game. And he should have an expanded role on the team next year, but there is no doubt about it. It is a big deal that he is coming back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he spent 3 years at Kansas, obviously used a redshirt year there. That's why he's going to be eligible for next season. But I by far the best season of his career. I mean, at Kansas, he didn't really do much of anything. A bench guy, didn't have much of a role. And, fast forward to this past season, and I mean, I think a lot of people are really surprised at some of the production. Obviously, he's very skilled to be able to transfer to an SEC team, and he's 6'11", can shoot the ball. I mean, the skill was there, but you had to wait and see if the production was going to, follow through. And, some games, obviously, where he's a little bit quiet. That's kind of how the A&M roster operated. Aside from, Aggie, a lot of the guys had some up and down moments scoring wise, because that's just how it was constructed. But whatever he was on. I mean, 29 points on the road against Arkansas. I mean, I understand that game got away from A&M a little bit, but if you're scoring 29 points in Fayetteville, you're an elite scorer, and you're a great player. And 20 points in a 1-point loss at home to Missouri. I remember that was a pretty thrilling game. He hit some big shots down the stretch of that one. 21 points against South Carolina. Super up and down scoring numbers. Goes from 21 points to 2 points the next game, and doing that on pretty limited minutes. So this guy can really fill it up. He's got great size. The thing is he's not exactly like a true shot blocking big man. Not a true 5. So if you're A&M, you can add a guy like that out of the portal to go alongside him potentially in the starting lineup next year. That's going to be a great potential fit for Bucky McMillan. So yeah, great news for the Aggies. I really like his upside next year. A&M, we've seen expectations now. It's make the NCAA tournament and win a game, and now you're trying to build on that. And getting a guy to return in an offseason where there's a lot of turnover is a pretty big deal. So adding him alongside McKenzie Mgbako next season gives the Aggies a lot of offensive firepower for sure.
Yeah, and in total, Clements finished with 8 games in double figures last season, 5 of which were in SEC play. You mentioned the 29 against Arkansas, the 20 against Mizzou, the 21 against South Carolina. He also had 14 against Ole Miss. He had 12 against Kentucky, 15 against Mississippi Valley State, 10 against Montana, and 12 against UCF. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit up and down, but it was pretty clear that when this guy got hot, that he was very hard to stop. I mean, you just look at that Arkansas game, for example, the 29-point game that he had. I mean, he was just knocking it down. 11 of 14 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3. He also was 4 or 5 from the line that night. And it seems like in all of these games that he kind of blows up, he just can't miss, because he was 7 of 8 from the field against South Carolina, all of which came from 3, and 8 of 10 against Missouri, 3 of 4 from 3. So he's kind of that stretch 4 guy that I think fits really nicely into the Bucky Ball mold. I completely agree. I think you do need to find a big man to put alongside him, assuming that he's in the starting lineup. He could just be kind of a 6th man type as well. We'll have to see what the Aggies end up doing in the portal. But it gives you a little bit better of an idea of what this team could look like in 2026. And another interesting thing about Clements, Zach, is he was a lot better at home than he was on the road. If you look at his splits from 2025-26, 19 games at home, he shot 51% from 3 and 49% from the field, averaging 7.7 points. Well, on the road, he shot just 25.7% from 3 and 45% from the field, and averaged 6.2 points. So, I mean, you get this guy at home, he's a lot better. You get him in SEC play, apparently he's a lot better, averaging a full point more per game. So, him coming back next year is a big deal, especially for the offense. Like you said, he's not much of a defensive guy, but still a pretty big deal for the Aggies. Unfortunately, there's also been some pretty bad news so far in the transfer portal for A&M. We already know about 2 losses, to one of which was, I think, more important than the other, though both very good players, in my opinion. The other one, Zach, I wasn't surprised, but it's still not great news for what Texas A&M is going to do in 2026. The NBA playoffs are here. Whether every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Head to FanDuel.com right now to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Just a quick shout out real quick to our loyal listeners here, Zach. Get Locked On Aggies ad-free with the Everydayer Club, plus members-only Discord access and more. Join at lockedonaggies.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more about that. Like I said, Zach, couple fairly large losses for Texas A&M, one of which I think was bigger than the other. Like I said, Reuben Dominguez is off to the transfer portal after just 1 year at Texas A&M. Josh Holloway, who followed Bucky McMillan from Samford to Texas A&M, is also off to the transfer portal. But also, not that long after the Zack Clemens news that we got, we also have another Texas A&M player who is entering the portal. This one is not as surprising. Pop Isaacs, the point guard who was on his 3rd stop. He started his career at Texas Tech, eventually transferred to Creighton, and now he is off to the transfer portal once again. This one hurts in a different way from the others, in large part because he didn't start off the season great. Not like anything to write home about necessarily, but as the season progressed, Pop Isaacs really became a key part of what Texas A&M was doing, specifically late in the year. The final 4 games of the regular season, he finished in double figures. With 18 against LSU, 12 against Oklahoma, 12 against Kentucky, 14 against Texas. He also had some other, pretty solid games in SEC play. He had 17 against Florida, 11 against Georgia and South Carolina, 10 against Mississippi State, 16 against Tennessee, 13 in the other Oklahoma game, and then 21 against Auburn. 11 against LSU. I mean, this guy, the more you look at his stats, like he was a pretty solid piece of this team. I don't think that he ever really popped the way that, no pun intended when I say that, but I don't think he ever really popped the way that everybody thought he was going to, because he was such a highly rated recruit coming out and then going to Texas Tech. And now it's, it's an experienced, really capable guard that you are going to now have to replace in the portal.
For sure. I mean, Pop Isaacs, tons of experience, tons of offensive ability. I really liked that pickup last offseason for A&M, and kind of wondered how he would fit into the mold because of how many guards Bucky McMillan added, and veteran guards at that. And I think like I mentioned with Zack Clemens, aside from Rashawn Agee, everyone in this offense had moments where they were really up and down scoring wise because that's just how the team was constructed. And Pop Isaacs was one of those guys, but I think he certainly found a level of consistency that you would have liked to have brought back. I do wonder, what the conversations were like with him and the coaching staff about not coming back because, at the end of the day, he's now going to be trying to play for his fourth team of his college career. 2 years at Texas Tech. He played 1 year at Creighton, obviously redshirted that year because of injury. He only played 8 games. You would think he'd want to find somewhat of a home for his last year, but maybe it's NIL stuff, maybe it's A&M or signaling that A&M has a guy in the portal that they're looking at. Who I know we'll talk about some of those guys maybe in a second, but maybe there's a plan in place there, and so maybe he wanted to return, but it didn't work out. You never know. We'll maybe eventually find these things out, but a little bit surprised on that one because with all the guards leaving, it seemed like there was definitely a spot in the rotation, even more so for Pop Isaacs. Then he played some good minutes last season. A few times during the SEC play where the minutes will go down a little bit because the rotation was pretty heavy. But I thought that there would be increased role for him next season. So a little bit surprising there, especially when you consider how big he came up for A&M at certain times. Against Auburn had a season high like 21 points or whatever it was, and that was a critical game for A&M's NCAA tournament chances. Of course, that was the game where the buzzer beater there at the end by Keyshawn Hall from half court goes in, and then they ruled it, they overturn it after a lengthy review, and A&M ends up winning that game. And what do you know? Fast forward towards March, and that road win was really big for the Aggies in terms of getting their seeding. So Pop Isaacs was big in games like that, a veteran guy, and so a little bit surprising that he didn't want to settle down and play a final year at A&M, especially after just arriving there. But I guess it is what it is, and we'll find out maybe the reason for those things at a later point. But now that's another member of the backcourt that you're losing. I mean, you mentioned it. Alec Diva, Jakari Lane, Rylan Griffin, and Marcus Hill. So let's say Marcus Hill doesn't get his eligibility waiver. That's 5 guards you've lost. And go actually count Josh Holloway and Reuben Dominguez. Even before the transfer portal stuff, that's already 4 guards, and you add 3 more to the mix there. Reuben Dominguez kind of more of a forward wing sort of guy, but that backcourt is completely different now. It's going to look completely different next season. So I don't envy Bucky McMillan because after just rebuilding the roster last year, he's having to do the exact same thing again. Not much continuity to go off of. So, it's going to be really interesting to see what A&M does in the backcourt and the portal. These things happen quick, so maybe only a matter of a few days before we start seeing the Aggies start to snag some of these commitments here.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that here in our third segment, Zach. But it kind of brings me to the discussion that I wanted to have with you that I feel like we kind of need to put together before we start talking about what they need in the portal, and that starts with the starting lineup. What is the starting lineup in 2025 or 2026, 2027 going to be for Texas A&M? It's a fantastic question because Bucky McMillan was able to make a tournament team out of a roster that had 0 players on it, and getting into the transfer portal after being hired late, he was able to piece something together, and it looked pretty good. A lot better than I think that most of us expected, because I think that they were projected to finish like 13th or 14th in the SEC, and they ended up finishing number 4 in the SEC in the regular season. So he can make it work with whatever you give him, it seems like, and he's able to find some talent where not a lot of other people are. But so what does this roster look like? I mean, we kind of have to just assume for this exercise that Marcus Hill is going to get his eligibility waiver. So I think you can probably slot him in as kind of your two guard, your combo guard. I after that, I mean, where do we go? We have McKenzie Mgbako probably as your four, I would guess. Jamie Vincent as your five potentially. And of course, this is without any transfer portal ads so far. I mean, they could go out and they could get a big guy, a shot blocker, something like that. But outside of that, Zach, the roster is kind of in limbo. I think that this team kind of needed to get Pop Isaacs back. I think that this team kind of needed to get Reuben Dominguez back because now you're looking at, off the bench, you'll have Frederico and, Chris McDermott and Noah Shelby. And there's just not a lot there right now. So where do you see the rest of this starting five going? Is it going to be, two more transfers that start? I think that's probably the case. Does Zack Clemens fit into the starting lineup instead of Jamie Vincent? I think that if Marcus Hill gets his waiver, he's going to obviously be a starter, a returning starter. McKenzie Mgbako is the best player on your team when he's healthy, so he will obviously be a starter. But outside of that, it's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really just don't know until we start seeing some of these portal commitments flying in for the Aggies. And Federico. I was looking at him. I'm not even sure if he even has eligibility left. And so you cross him off the list as well. Unless I'm missing something, he's played 4 seasons, no red shirts. So, that's another guy who you can just count out there. Jamie Vincent is a guy who I have a lot of confidence in what he can do. And I think he had some good games he put together, good flashes. But for whatever reason, it didn't really seem like Bucky McMillan trusted him a whole lot with heavy minutes. He didn't play. He only played double-digit minutes a handful of times. His season high was 16 minutes against Manhattan, and then he played 11 minutes in the NCAA tournament against Houston in that blowout loss. And that was the first time he had done that since December when he got 10 or more minutes. So I don't really see, unless he has a big offseason and the staff is super confident in him, I don't see him being in the starting lineup. So you got to go out and find a center. If you're the Aggies, there's not unless you want to start Jamie Vincent, there's not a starting caliber center on the roster currently. I think you hit it right on the head. This team kind of needed Pop Isaacs to stay. So unless they have a major plan in place to bring in some portal guys, it was a little bit surprising to see that. I do think Zack Clemens is a starting caliber guy. It all depends on who they get out of the portal, of course, as we've said 100 times. But I do think he's a starting caliber guy. He's got experience. He's got scoring ability at that 4 spot. McKenzie Mgbako, obviously a 4 as well. If you want to go really big with lots of offensive firepower, play Mgbako at the 3. He's 6'9" at the 3 spot. That's a lot of size, SEC size right there. Marcus Hill at the 2, and then slot in a transfer portal point guard, transfer portal center. That's a pretty good starting lineup, in my opinion. That's experience. That's offensive capability. And who knows who that center and that point guard would look like. But that's a lot of stuff to be excited about right there if you're the Aggies. It's impossible. I've seen a lot of fans from multiple teams see these projected lineups or whatever it is, the projected starting 5 for next season, and the portal has just opened, and it's sometimes the exercise is completely pointless because it's kind of like what John Calipari said. He met with the team and there is no team. It's impossible to make a projection for next season when you don't know who's on the team quite yet, when the portal has barely really been moving in terms of guys going on to new teams. So it'll still be a while until we know what that starting 5 will look like. But Marcus Hill, Zack Clemens, McKenzie Mgbako, transfer portal point guard, transfer portal center. That sounds pretty good to me. But it all depends on who they get out of the portal, because you're going to need to address the bench as well. And who knows what that will look like, because sometimes some mid-major guy comes out of nowhere and secures a bench spot and ends up playing a significant role. but it's hard to tell who those guys would be at this point. It's kind of easier to maybe look at starting level guys. So it'll still be a little while. But like we've said, these things can move fast. So we'll start getting the commitments probably in the next couple of weeks. We'll know who those guys are. And then as the offseason goes on and we get some feedback from the coaching staff, you may get a better sense of what that starting five would look like, later this fall.
Yeah, and you're right. I just looked it up. I could have sworn he had another year, but Federico is out of eligibility, so that's another one you can cross off the list. So here's what the Texas A&M roster overall looks like in terms of players coming back, in addition to Marcus Hill, should he get his waiver. You have Marcus Hill, Zack Clemens, Jamie Vincent, McKenzie Mgbako, and that's it out of the consistent players from last year's roster. You also have Nico Mundy, who is a 4-star recruit, combo guard. You have Chris McDermott, who's a 3-star recruit. Freshman Josh Irving, who's a 4-star recruit. He will be on the roster as well. And then walk-on Noah Shelby. There's some, like, you have hope for Nico Mundy. You have hope for Chris McDermott. You have hope for Josh Irving, but they're still young. You can't really rely on those guys to be a key part of the roster next year until they really prove it. So they're going to have to make some moves in the portal, Zach. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. The good news is we do know that they are making those moves. We do know that they are in contact with a lot of talented players and some guys that are incredibly interesting when you look at them.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. UCLA made history by winning its first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, dominating South Carolina 79-51. The Bruins controlled the game from start to finish with elite defense and balanced scoring, finishing the season 37-1. Star center Lauren Betts was named Most Outstanding Player, leading a team effort that capped a 31-game winning streak. Under head coach Corey Close, UCLA secured a landmark title that has been decades in the making. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes. I'm coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Welcome back. We have some names. I've got 5 names now for Texas A&M that they are pursuing right now in the portal. We'll start off with the first one, Zach. KJ Lewis out of Georgetown. He spent 2 years with Georgetown, or with Arizona, before moving on to Georgetown. This is a guard that averaged 14.9 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. In 28 games, he started 27 of those games before suffering an injury to his ankle against Marquette on February 24th, which ended his season prematurely. We also have another transfer guard, Terrence Hill Jr. From VCU. He averaged 15 points per game, shooting 46.6% from the field, 37% from three, and 84.4% from the line. He was their top scoring option. He was also the top playmaker with 2.8 assists per game. So that's a very interesting one. And then you also have Providence transfer Jameer Jones, who averaged 11.9 points and 4.5 rebounds per game, as he was one of the best freshmen in the Big East last year. And then you have Cameron Taylor from UNC Asheville, the 6'7" sophomore guard. This one's incredibly interesting to me, Zach. 6'7" sophomore guard, averaged 18.9 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. Hit 45.3% from the field. He was one of the top scorers in the mid-major group. So that's a very interesting one. We also have Texas A&M interested in 6'8" forward Jalen Shelley out of Loyola Marymount. He began his career at USC, and he was a consensus 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He averaged just 2 points per game last year, appeared in 22 games. He also shot just 55% from the line and 17.6% from three. But he's got some tools. Those were his stats at USC. At Loyola Marymount, he really took a big step forward. Averaged 13.7 points per game in 31 minutes and 6.6 rebounds as well. So he really was able to take a step forward there as well. So a lot of different names here to consider, Zach.
Yeah, tons of different names. At the end of the day, A&M and all these teams are going to be in contact with tons of guys. And what does that contact look like? Is it a quick text? Is it a quick Zoom call? Contacts and some of the interest is more serious than others. But certainly some of those names just stand out to Aggie fans. KJ Lewis, a guy who I think is pretty interesting. Athleticism, defensive capability on the wing. He's listed as an El Paso native, but he's actually a Duncanville product in the Dallas area. So played at Arizona, played at Georgetown, both far from home. Maybe he wants to come back to Texas. And so that's a guy to certainly watch. He's got that experience. He would definitely be coming to A&M, in my opinion, as a guy that's going to be looking to start. And so, start him potentially at the 2. Maybe Marcus Hill comes off the bench. You get a wing at the 3, and then you have Mgbako at the 4, a portal guy at the 5. Interesting stuff to think about and speculate on. So, he's a good name to consider. Terrence Hill Jr. from VCU, really great numbers. VCU is one of the best mid-majors, and so they should be treated with a ton of respect when it comes to the portal. Obviously, they won an incredible first-round game in March Madness against North Carolina. Came all the way back from 20 down or whatever, forced overtime, and Terrence Hill Jr. was the reason that they won that game. 34 points in that overtime win in the NCAA tournament. 7 of 10 from 3. I mean, he really put it on the biggest stage. That was an incredible game, and I think that game. He already had a great season before that, but that game certainly put him even further on the map for a lot of these teams because just look it up. The list of teams interested in him is long. So A&M is certainly not one of the only programs that are going to be after him. But I think he's a really interesting guy. He can score the ball, he can fill it up, and he can operate as your lead guard, and that's exactly what A&M needs. So, you got to consider him. But I really want to see the Aggies potentially go after an elite center, an elite shot blocker. You haven't really seen those names quite yet. I would hope that comes to fruition a little bit. But we'll have to wait and see. At the end of the day, they do need to get the starting point guard, but Terrence Hill, a lot of teams are going to be interested in him. One of the guys I think A&M should potentially target is Chol Machot. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he's a center from Charleston, 7 foot, 190. Shot blocking capabilities out the roof. I mean, he can score as well. I know Charleston, at the mid-major level, but still a respectable mid-major. And he put up some impressive numbers last season. Had a game against, Elon last year where he had 15 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 blocks. That's exactly what A&M needs because if you don't trust Jamie Vincent, which doesn't seem like they do, you need a guy who can go and defend the rim because A&M didn't really have that this past season. That's something we talked about a lot. That was one of their weaknesses. And so Chol Machot, I believe he was actually the defensive player of the year in that conference this past season. I don't see how you couldn't be. I mean, he averaged, multiple blocks a game, 2.5 blocks a game. So, and 8.9 points a game isn't too bad either. If you can put together double-digit performances scoring-wise and protect the rim in the process, that's a guy who should be highly coveted. And I haven't really seen his name a whole lot discussed, across the country. So A&M should try to jump at the opportunity to get him or some other centers because I think you're going to need that, and then keep focusing on those guards. But yeah, KJ Lewis, Terrence Hill Jr., certainly interesting names to keep an eye on. But like I mentioned, A&M is not going to be the only team targeting those guys, so you're going to have to make a good pitch. I think Bucky McMillan will be able to do that. He's a great recruiter, and we saw what he was able to do last offseason, putting together a roster. So even if he does get some guys that A&M fans maybe aren't as familiar with, I think there's no reason not to feel confident in him based on what he did last offseason, because I think A&M exceeded all expectations. The fact they were able to win an NCAA tournament game is something that I don't think a lot of people expected. So just have faith in Bucky McMillan. Whoever they get, you have to just feel confident in what the product will look like until proven otherwise. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. And, if you were to sit here and tell me right now that Texas A&M was going to fill out their starting lineup with Terrence Hill Jr. and Chol Machot, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly either. The guy averaged 2.5 blocks per game, though. That's incredibly elite. If you could fill out your starting lineup with those two guys, with Marcus Hill and potentially another transfer, maybe Nico Mundy takes a step forward, I think you have a really good starting point. So I really like those picks, Zach. I mean, I'm still really high on the UNC Asheville kid as well, Cameron Taylor. I mean, this guy can really, really fill it up. I know it wasn't against the best competition ever, but he 26 points, 35 points, 24 points, 25 points, 22 points, 26, 27, 27, 24. Like, this guy was filling it up all year long. He had 29 in a game as well. If you can fill your roster out that way, I really think that it could be some promising things in the future for Texas A&M. But that's going to do it here for Locked On Aggies. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Tomorrow we will be back to talk more portals, so make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast to get all the latest episodes. We will also talk spring football because we had some media availabilities that are going on as we record this. We will bring you the latest from that. You can find us on every major social media platform at Locked On Aggies. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Aggies ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonaggies.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is Locked On College Basketball, and we'll see you tomorrow.